Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Operation DarkStar, Chapter 35 to Chapter 38, by Mark Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 35. Utter bullshit, Apache said, throwing his arms up to enforce his displeasure. Dr. Booth had just finished briefing the new arrivals on her plan. She always knew it was going to be a hard sell. Jordan. Let's keep an open mind, Sarah said, trying to calm the ex-biker down. Come on, Sarah. Tell me you're not buying this, Apache replied. He does have a point, Tarnay added. Not you too, Sarah said. I'm not judging you. Hell, I want to believe it's true too. But what the good doctor is suggesting, it's fucking insane, Tarnay added. Sarah nodded. We want to believe, but Dr. Booth, you can see where we're going with this, Scott said. So what you're saying is that you need proof, Booth said with a smile. Cooper returned with something that resembled a black shoebox. He placed it carefully like fine china on the table they were all standing around. The moment the box was placed down, it released a deep, resonating hum that refused to go away. What is it? Paige asked. The box itself has been constructed from lead. We have discovered that it completely blocks the signal of the tiny fragment of the meteor we have inside, Booth said. Several members of the group took a step back, as if the box itself might explode at any moment. It's okay. It can't hurt you, Rob said. Then why do you need to have it secured? Bam Bam asked. Scott, could you take out your torch and turn it on? Booth asked. Scott appeared puzzled but did as he was asked. Booth nodded as Lee and Rob turned off everything in the room, only the small glow of the torch keeping the darkness at bay. Cooper placed two large hands either side of the black box. Then hesitantly, he removed the lid. Before their stunned eyes, the light was immediately snatched from the torch and pulled towards the box's interior, where it was absorbed within a tiny sliver of black stone. The room was immediately thrown into darkness. There was a crack as luminous green light snapped, a military-grade psyllium stick appearing in Lee's hand. This small piece was held off-site in a laboratory on the other side of town, the missing component of the meteor and the key to stopping the madness, Booth said. That was a cool trick with the torch, but it's not proof enough for me, Apache sneered. That wasn't the proof, Lee said. Then what is? Saul asked. This will seem unusual, but if you'll indulge me, I want you all to place a hand upon me. It doesn't have to be skin on skin, open hand to my shoulders, arms, and back. Once you are all in position, we'll begin, Booth instructed. No one moved. They all looked apprehensive. Do it. Don't do it. I guarantee if you do, it'll change your life. After that, do what you want, Rob said. Gates let out a nervous chuckle, then fell silent when he caught Bam Bam's gaze. The teenaged girl was the first to step forward. Paige placed a hand on Dr. Booth's shoulder. She then coaxed Jared to follow suit, the ex-firefighter placing one hand on Booth, the other on Paige. There was mixed discussion on the absurdity of the situation, but they all leant in and did what was asked. Like the tail of a peacock, they stood in a semicircle around the doctor, who in turn was positioned next to the box on the table. I'll see you on the other side, Booth said cryptically, before placing her hand into the box and touching the black sliver of rock. The result was instantaneous. It was as if Booth had grabbed a live wire and pure electricity had poured into her and into the others connected. They all went ramrod straight. Their faces collectively turned towards the ceiling, eyes open and completely black. Freaks me out every time. Cooper said as he took a seat on the chair next to Lee, waiting and watching. They were all sharing the same experience, the same vision. As a collective, they were watching everything that had occurred with the meteor as experienced by Dr. Booth. From the moment the experiment had begun, then failed. Her escape from the facility and into the city, where she had fought and hid from the monstrosities appearing out of the newly formed portals, wandering the ruins of the new world, finding Rob, then Lee, and finally Cooper, retrieving the sliver of rock and making the connection to the meteor, going back to the Wagner Institute and finding the insane Dr. Gates, who was, at the time, no better than a worm in the darkness, and somehow escaping the madness of what was happening there. They could all see the meteor pulsating and growing, drawing the energy from the earth. They could also see creatures that were even more horrible and disturbing than anything they had seen before, and somehow they knew instinctively that these creatures had greater sentience. Then a switch was thrown, and they were pulled back into reality. They were all thrown back from the surge of insight. Only Booth managed to stay on her feet, the others falling and landing roughly on the ground. Paige and Tarnay scrambled to the side and vomited violently. The others in the group were struggling, gasping for breath, all adrenaline totally exhausted. In the blink of an eye, they had all just relived and experienced the last 8 years with Dr. Booth. Scott looked up at Rob, who handed the ex-Delta operator a glass of water. "Do you still want to see the door?" Rob said. We don't have much time," Scott said, taking the glass and downing the contents in several long gulps. They all sat around the large table, Saul and the others still recovering from the effects of the piece of meteor. Dr. Gates was curled up, asleep on the floor nearby, his legs still chained. "Don't worry, the effects will wear off soon," Lee assured. "I fucking hope so," Paige moaned. "Language, young lady," Saul grumbled. The teenage girl shot the ex-detective an annoyed glance but nodded out of respect. "The stuff we saw, it was real, wasn't it?" Bam Bam asked. "Maybe it was just a group hallucination," Apache said quickly. "You know it wasn't. We witnessed firsthand how Armageddon took place," Scott said. "It was more than that, though," Sarah said. "A glimpse into something more. A way to end this," Saul said. "How can that be, though?" Tarnay asked. "I have thought on that over the last couple of years. I believe that shit beyond our comprehension requires balance," Booth said. "Is this shit going to stop the world's end?" Apache asked. "No, I don't think that's how it works. It has made us aware. It's up to us. Only us to stop it," Booth said. "Of course it is," Apache chuckled. "Will you shut up a moment?" Sarah growled. "I don't mean to be a dick about this, but why should we try? I mean, look around. This place sucks. There are no animals, only vermin. Plant life is dying. There are still creatures roaming the earth. If the world is going to end, maybe we should just let it," Bam Bam said. "What about the kids?" Tarnay argued. "What about the kids? You expect them to grow old on this shriveled-up piece of rock. If the end comes, it would be sparing them years of heartache and fear," Bam Bam continued. There was a long silence as those words sunk in, until Sarah jumped to her feet. "Great bloody attitude. I thought you bikers were made of sterner stuff. You know, flipping the bird and no fucks given to the man. Well, here's a hot tip. This thing going on around us is the man. Are you going to tell me you're going to go out on a whimper? Or would you rather go out with a bang?" Sarah said fiercely. Bam Bam and Apache looked humbled, the ex-paramedic putting them on show. "She's right. We need to try and fix this. My ancestors were warriors. They would expect no less. It's in my blood. If we should go down, then let's do it pissing in fate's eye, Tarnay growled, gaining support from the others. I think you have our answer, Dr. Booth. I do have one question. Why haven't you tried earlier to do something? Scott asked. In your vision, you didn't see everything. I released the stone too early. You missed the last few years, Booth said. What happened? Saul asked suspiciously. The several failed attempts we made to right this wrong, Rob replied. Back when there were at least 24 of us, Cooper added. You see, this really is our last opportunity to do this, Booth said. What's the plan? Scott asked. We need to get this remaining piece of rock and place it with the others, then reverse the process. Booth fell silent. What else? Saul asked, seeing the doctor and her 3 soldiers suddenly become uneasy. To get the machine going again, we need a new start capacitor, Cooper said. Surely we could pick one up at the nearest hardware store, Page asked. Not likely. I'm guessing that not only is it an industrial piece, but it was designed specifically for this machine, Bam Bam said. That's exactly the problem. When the initial experiment started, the capacitor was blown. The only other replacement part is located in a separate area, Cooper said. So we get in, find the doohickey and get out, Apache said. Yeah. About that, Rob confirmed. The big question is, where is the capacitor? Saul asked. There was silence. It's held in the sub-basement of the Franklin building, Lee said. Are you shitting me? Saul groaned. Isn't that the Museum of Science and History? Sarah asked. Should be easy enough then, Apache said. Saul grabbed him by the shoulder. I had to conduct an investigation there a few years ago. Stolen artifacts. Some parts of that place were locked up tighter than Fort Knox. Heavy-duty security. Not to mention the artistic structural layout is a nightmare. This won't be easy, Saul said. He's right. The people funding Project DarkStar were overly cautious with a lot of the equipment. They had rented secure holdings to keep a lot of mission-critical items safe. They couldn't afford to replace them if they went missing or were stolen. They are behind 6-inch plate steel doors, Booth said. Don't you have a key or know a code that can open them? Tarnay asked. There is no key and no power. We'll need steel cutting tools to get through the hinges on the doors. I know of a place 5 miles down the road. They may have what we require, although it still may take a few hours to cut through the steel, though, Lee said. Too long, but I do have another idea. It'll take a fraction of the time, but I'll need to take a detour. All I need is 2 others. Tarnay, you up for a midnight stop-off? Scott asked. You know it, brother, Tarnay said with a grin. I'll come too if that suits, Lee offered. Scott nodded his approval. The rest of you get to the museum and we'll meet you there in 1 hour. No more talk. Let's get this thing done, Scott said. Chapter 36. The ex-ranger proved quite adept at moving in the darkness. Scott was impressed with how Lee moved along with Tarnay and himself, as if he had been doing it for years. They made good time, despite constantly evading the monsters that lurked in the night. The ex-Delta's memory was still fresh after so many years. Scott led them into an industrial area, familiar but also changed by the passage of time. We've never been this way before? Tarnay asked as they walked up the deserted street. The stuff we'll find was stuff that I thought we'd never need. Least of all what I wanted stored down in the bunker with us and the children, Scott replied. What is it? Lee asked. We're here, Scott announced as they warily made their way up through the now destroyed chain-link fence and towards the windowless concrete building. Stay sharp. The last time I was here, I barely got out alive, Scott said, the memory still vivid and fresh. He led them around the back of the building and towards the secret tunnel that would lead them in. The door wide open, still as he'd left it. Weapons raised and expecting the worst, Scott entered first, the darkness even more dense than the eternal night sky. His heart was hammering so loudly in his chest that it almost made hearing impossible. From memory, he remembered that the tunnel had 3 major bends before coming out into the main area of the building. They navigated their way around without contact. Entering near the docking areas, Scott could see the destroyed catwalk, twisted and bent almost beyond recognition, a condition that he had been wholly responsible for. The scattered remains of creatures littered the surrounding area, as well as 2 human bodies. By the looks of things, it must have been a hell of a battle, Lee mused. It was. Barely escaped with my skin intact, Scott replied. This happened on Judgment Day, didn't it? Tarnay said. Yeah, it was pure insanity, Scott reflected. Bethany told me once how you got her and the kids out. She had said that she had never been so scared in her life, Tarnay said. Truth be told, so was I. But anyone still breathing today has a similar story from that night, Scott said. The 2 men's silence as they reflected on their own life and death stories were testament to his statement. They passed a 3rd body picked clean by time and vermin, Major Elms, just another casualty in the end. Scott also remembered Corporal Megan Breen, the only member from this facility that had managed to make it out alive with him that night, only to be eaten alive by a tentacled monstrosity 2 years later, her agonized screams suggesting that her death had been long and drawn out. Her death had cut deeply. They had formed a bond. She had become like a sister to him. He shook away the thoughts. Her death had been a few years ago, and they still had a lot to do. They rounded a corner, their mounted torches illuminating the storage rooms ahead. Scott let out a sigh of relief at the sight of the stacked crates inside. Thank God. It feels bloody good to finally catch a break, Scott said. They quickly entered the room, years of dust covering everything. Tarnay, shine your torch here, Scott urged, as he used the palm of his hand to wipe the filth from the side of the crate, revealing a printed black sun with a red lightning bolt inside. Is that what I think it is? Lee asked, his eyes going wide. Yes, and yes, it does work as good as the rumors would suggest. That destruction in the loading bays is courtesy of this stuff, Scott said. God damn, this is amazing. If only we'd known about this earlier, we could have. Lee's voice trailed off. Hey, bro, it's pointless worrying about things you can't change, Tarnay said. Scott removed his backpack and emptied the contents of the crate into it. Get as many grenades from the other crates as you can carry. I need to see something, Scott said. The ex-Delta walked off down the corridor alone, memories of Megan triggering something she had said years earlier, now making him think that there may be something else in the building that could possibly help them. Being careful to limit his noise as he walked, Scott also kept himself to one side of the corridor, inhibiting the possibility of a silhouette. Rounding a corner, he could see 2 doors ahead. One opened, the other closed. Passing the beam quickly through the doorframe, he could see the room thick with stationary boxes and nothing else. Rattling the other door proved more difficult, as it was secured with a numerical keyless lock. Knowing that the pin was usually 4 digits long, with a potential of 10,000 possible combinations, Scott opted for a more direct approach. Placing the muzzle of his assault rifle against the lock, he fired once. The sound of the single shot echoed throughout the facility, and in the floor above them, something in the pitch black opened one eye. Shit, Tarnay growled. They had just finished loading the explosives when Scott's gunshot had rang out. No words were uttered. They grabbed their gear and raced off into the unknown. The ex-Delta operator pulled the door open and slowly entered. The beam of his torch tracked across the room. Bingo, Scott whispered. The room was small, an equipment shelf unit positioned at the rear. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of old-world money equipment was stacked carefully on the shelves. His mind focused, he started to sort through the tech, placing small handheld components into the pockets of his cargo pants. Spinning around, he sensed sudden movement behind. His slung rifle forgotten, he drew his pistol with lightning reflexes, his finger tensed on the trigger, ready to unleash hell. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," a familiar voice warned. His hands held out, Tarnay quick to show his comrade that they weren't a threat. "It's okay," Scott said, letting out a nervous breath. "Fuck, brother. We thought you were in trouble," Tarnay replied. "Crap, I'm sorry, I had a hunch. It proved to be right," Scott said, pointing to the racks behind. "Time's short," Scott added. "It is," Lee said, not happy, but understanding their circumstances. "You got the explosives?" Scott asked. Tarnay nodded. "Great. I've now got timers, batteries, and initiators. Let's get the fuck." Scott had no time to finish his sentence as something large entered the room and grabbed Lee from behind and then ripped him from sight. A hellish scream was left in his wake. "What the fuck was that?" Tarnay asked rhetorically, both men scanning the room. Chapter 37. They made it to a small hill overlooking the museum unmolested. For many of them, this was the first sliver of hope they had experienced since the night of the portals, 8 years ago, the night that hell had opened its doorways into the world. Rob and Cooper cracked psyllium sticks and placed them into the ground on either side of the group. "They should be able to see the lights without them being too offensive," Cooper said. Sarah pulled Booth aside. The scientist had Dr. Gates on a chain, like she was out walking her pet. The doctor appeared quite docile. "Do you really think you can stop this?" Sarah asked, indicating their warped and deadly reality. "I really believe we can," Booth replied. "And then what?" Saul said a little testily. He had been eavesdropping, but the lack of detail was making him angry. "If the world has days before it dies completely, I think we could all agree that no matter what, she's still dying," Saul added. "Things will probably get worse. It's a shit situation. Look, I know that I look like a world-class bitch, but I don't want to die either. While we breathe, we may find the answer," Booth explained. "She's smart. Really smart. If anyone can find the answer, it's her." "And Gates," Rob said as an afterthought. "The real pressing issue is getting into the Wagner Institute. Within its walls is an active port," Booth said. "An active portal?" Page said incredulously. "Yes, but it's very weak. It would be lucky to spit out a cosmic horror every second week," Booth replied. "That's still a lot of monsters to get through," Apache warned. "Indeed. Also, the ones that seem to be coming through are smarter, cunning," Cooper said in disgust. "And all we have to do is get the starter thingy down there," Page said, pointing down the hill towards the large facility, which was shrouded in darkness and looking forebodingly dangerous. "Just another walk in the park," Bam Bam grumbled. Chapter 38. With his rifle raised, Scott was the first through the door. He looked both ways, up and down the corridor, and could see nothing. Then his torch beam tracked fresh blood on the floor. Then they heard a blood-curdling scream. Both men following the noise, they raced in to help. Rounding a corner, they could hear the frenzied attack of the creature, Lee's cries for help getting weaker. Scott signaled to Tarnay to slow down, the big Maori nodding, his automatic shotgun at the ready. They entered through a double doorway. Scott could see a giant, malformed, bloody handprint on one of the doors. He ignored its size and the deep marks in the timber caused by the obvious claws. Reflexes created and forged on the battlefield steeled the two men's nerves as they entered what appeared to be a conference room. Scott was the first through. In the dark, he could just make out a large table, and beyond it, a pair of giant shoulders hunched over, which Tarnay first thought belonged to a grizzly bear. "You, mother, fucker!" A weak voice belonging to Lee growled in defiance. They both knew the ex-ranger was running out of time. The two men took separate paths down either side of the large table, the briefest of nods passing between them. "Hey, Fleabag!" Tarnay taunted. The creature ahead froze for the briefest of seconds and then swung in his direction. Tarnay's instincts were pretty close to the mark. The demon was indeed shaped like a bear. Even its giant-sized head held the shape and characteristics of the world's largest carnivore. However, the general shape was all it held. The beast was black, which gave it the appearance of having no skin. The mouth was exposed and held many teeth. Tarnay tensed his trigger finger and fired, just as the creature's head disappeared from view. "It's gone under," Scott yelled, just as the table was thrown aside. Tarnay dived and rolled, barely avoiding the half-ton of solid timber as it landed next to him. Scott let loose with a short burst from his assault rifle, missing the swift-moving shadow. The beast roared and charged towards the ex-Delta soldier, who barely had time to raise his rifle protectively across his vulnerable throat, just as the demon's mouth clamped down. All Scott could see was white, dagger-like teeth attempting to tear its way through. Bright, glowing eyes stared at Scott. Madness, insanity, bottomless hunger. Translucent drool dripped heavily over his face. Scott roared as he attempted to push the behemoth from him. Tarnay rolled in the darkness, struggling to make out what was going on. All he could see was black shapes and the ravenous growling of the bear monster. Scott was using both hands to keep the beast at bay, all the while thinking about the 8-inch dagger resting in his right boot and how he was going to wrestle it free when something flashed before his eyes. Then thick black blood splashed over his face. He nearly gagged as the alien blood filled his mouth. The demon went ramrod straight as a thick machete-styled blade hit its temple, cleaving through tissue and bone and nearly coming out of the other side. Its eyes wide, it slumped forward dead, nearly crushing Scott beneath. Still holding the large blade, Lee toppled back. Gasping for breath, Scott was relieved when the weight of the creature was pulled from his chest, happy and relieved to see the smug grin of Tarnay staring down. Jesus, brother. The idea was to eliminate the threat, not cuddle it. Tarnay helped his friend to his feet. "Where's Lee?" Scott asked, just as he saw the prone figure lying near the deceased monster. The creature had inflicted major damage upon the ex-ranger, his wounds grisly and mortal, yet he hung on to life with the tenacity of a drowning man. Coughing and spluttering as blood-filled lungs struggled for air, he looked up at Tarnay and Scott. One eye gone and blood pouring profusely from his nose and grinning mouth. "I bet that fucking thing never saw that coming." Lee chuckled, which turned into a coughing fit. They attempted to sit him up, but he shrugged their efforts off. "Don't bother. I'm done for, and you both know it," Lee said. Scott wanted to argue, fill the ex-soldier with hope, but the man's life had mere minutes left. "Listen, we're gonna try. Promise me," Lee interrupted. Scott and Tarnay fell silent. "Promise me. You'll put a stop to this. Promise me." Lee said with sudden, desperate urgency. Tarnay grasped the man's hand in a tight grip, despite it being slick with blood. I promise you, brother, we will get this done, or all die trying. Nothing gets left undone, Tarnay said with absolute conviction. Lee's breathing started coming in long, drawn-out gasps, the ex-ranger fighting to the bitter end. Tarnay maintained eye contact as Lee's breathing slowed, then stopped, his eyes glazing over. Rest easy, friend. May your ancestors be there to guide you to the afterworld, Tarnay said solemnly. Son of a bitch. Another good man gone. Booth better be right. She better not be yanking our chains, Scott growled. I think she is. Without getting too dramatic. I think this is our last stand. I mean humanity's. We have to show those benevolent forces out there in the void that we deserve the right to exist, Tarnay said. You may be right. If that is the case, though, then let's show them how humans go to war, Scott said, as he grabbed something from the vest of Lee. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Operation DarkStar has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.